Morning, everyone. As Rod has said, it's been nice with day one. Now we're on day two, and hopefully it will be as interesting as yesterday. My name is Nolwazi Mkize from Corteva Agriscience. I'll be facilitating this session, and the topic is still about stewardship compliance. The question is, are you a responsible crop advisor? This morning, we've got about 3 speakers, which I will introduce soon, which is followed by a panel discussion, which will be led by Corné, Louw. The first speaker, it will be Gideon Hefer, who is the Managing Director for InteliGro, who's going to be sharing with us about the responsible link between registration holder and a farmer. This is a pre-recorded session, and we've got a mix of live and pre-recorded sessions. After Gideon, we are going to have Derek Matthews, who is actually the grain producer, a grain farmer, who's going to be talking to us about what does the producer expect from a distributor or a crop advisor. Followed after that, it's Vutlhari Chauke, who is coming from grower and founder of VT Harvest, who is an emerging farmer who's going to be sharing with us what does the producer expect from a distributor or a crop advisor. Over to you, Gideon Hefer. Thank you so much.
Good day, everybody. My name is Gideon Hefer, and it's a privilege for me to discuss the topic connected to stewardship compliance, being a responsible crop advisor, and specifically the link between the registration holder and the farmer. The content of my presentation will include the introduction, some key questions. I'm going to discuss something on systems thinking, and also the life cycle approach. Then following will be the responsibility of the crop advisor, specifically relating to crop advisors, and then concluding with the summary. The role of the crop protection industry is to ensure safe, sustainable food production and also sustainable farming practices in South Africa. However, to fulfill this, there are significant challenges that need to be overcome. First of all, climatological aspects need to be taken into account. Ever-rising input costs are posing huge challenges. Pressure from markets, both locally and international, regarding MLLs, standards, etc., are ever-changing. There are pest and disease challenges that need to be taken into account. And then also resistance management. And lastly, perceptions from consumers and retailers. And we can expand on this list. It can be very long and very comprehensive. The responsibility and the accountability of the different role players in the food value chain need to be clearly understood. And we as a distribution channel, especially the crop advisor, need to understand our responsibility as the advice and the inputs that are being given at farm level are key in overcoming some of these challenges listed above. A crop advisor is seen by the industry and by the farmers as an expert when it comes to aspects associated with crop protection. To understand what an expert means, we need to look at the definition of an expert. And that is defined as a person who is very knowledgeable about or skillful in a particular area. And with crop advisors, it's to do with crop protection products and the application of it. We can ask a few critical questions regarding the above comments to think about as part of our introduction. Can you really be an expert without the necessary experience, knowledge, and training or qualification? Will you classify yourself as an expert? What do you think about the current status of our industry? How do you think people outside the industry look at our industry? Do you understand the responsibility associated when acting as a real expert? And do you really understand the impact or potential impact of your actions on humans and the environment? If we look at systems thinking, I want to tell you a short story based on true facts that happened in the 1950s in Borneo. There was an outbreak of malaria in Borneo. The people of Borneo contacted the World Health Organization for assistance. And the WHO sprayed large amounts of DDT to kill the mosquitoes, which seemed like the obvious thing to do back then. However, there were some side effects that they did not take into account. The first one was roofs of houses collapsed, and the question was posed, why? Then they discovered that the DDT killed wasps that controlled thatch-eating caterpillars. In turn, geckos ate the dead wasps, and the DDT remained in their system and accumulated. Something else happened, and that was that cats ate the geckos and died due to low resistance to the DDT. The result was the population of rats multiplied in Borneo, and that caused another lot of problems. Borneo called the WHO again to come and assist with the rat plague and the destruction of their grain stores. And there was no easy answer for that, not a simple one. And the next thing that happened was that they parachuted 14,000 live cats into Borneo to eradicate the rats. And that was called Operation Cat Drop. Now, why do I tell this story? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons that I can think of. Firstly, if you don't understand the interrelatedness of things, obvious solutions often cause more problems than actual solutions. Simple questions often require complex and reflective thinking if good solutions are to be found. It is always better to manage by design than by default. And that's also true of our industry. If we look at the crop protection industry, we need to have a life cycle approach to product management. And the life cycle approach starts with the R&D of new molecules to design new products. After it's being commercialized, then it's being manufactured. Then it needs to be stored and transported to distribution. As part of integrated pest management programs, it's used at farm level. It should be used responsibly. Then another question comes with container management, and lastly, the management and disposal of obsolete stocks. Now, the crop advisor played the role in the following aspects. From storage and transportation, integrated pest management, responsible use, container management, and disposal of obsolete stock. So we can see that the crop advisor actually play a very significant role in the whole life cycle of a product. Now, if you look at stewardship, we can define it as such for our industry. It is a life cycle approach to crop protection product management to ensure safe production, transportation, storage, handling, application and use of the product, as well as proper disposal of the waste. It's obviously very comprehensive, and we as a distribution side of the industry need to take note of what our real responsibilities are. To be a responsible crop advisor, there are obviously a number of requirements. Firstly, you need to provide the best solution advice to a farmer or stakeholder. And you have to do it in a responsible and sustainable manner based on good agriculture practices. To achieve this, the following aspects are really important. You have to take into consideration the specific crop. Then the pests, that's the insects, diseases, weeds that can cause damage. The different solutions that are available, including your IPM approach. The different products and how to position them in a technical manner that's suitable for the circumstances. You also need to take an integrated view towards crop production, meaning take into account what seed or cultivar is used, what's the plant nutrition that was applied, and also the interaction of the crop protection with the former two aspects. The history of the previous year's results, the products used in the specific orchard or field also needs to be taken into account. And then lastly, but very important, is market access, specifically to do with food safety and consumer preferences. We can see that if you have to take into account all these aspects, that the marketing and sale of crop protection products is much more complex than meets the eye. Now, to do this effectively, there are a number of aspects that are really important. The following aspects are important when you want to comply with the above. First of all, good quality training to stay up to date with all the mentioned technical aspects. And that includes training from the distributor, suppliers, external institutes, and research-based institutions. Assessment and evaluation of crop advisors play an important role as part of the training. Programs and initiatives like the Continuous Professional Development Program of CropLife is also crucial in ensuring that individuals meet at least the minimum criteria. Trials and data remain very important, and that's the only real way to obtain insights in how products work under which circumstances. Nowadays, technologies start to play a much bigger role than previously to assist in effective decision making. The crop advisor should also have a long-term approach towards sustainability, taking into account for years to come. He or she should be solution-driven and not product-driven, meaning that the whole package, the holistic approach, should be taken into account when recommending certain products. It should be backed up by good quality technical support and also follow-up after the recommendation and the application to ensure that it's actually working the way it was meant to work. In an industry like ours, there are obviously laws and regulations that need to be adhered to. The first one relates to recommendations in accordance with Act 36 of 1947, which clearly states that the label is a legal binding document. We should refrain from participating in any off-label recommendations, whether it's verbally, written, or even just suggesting off-label use of products. The next aspect is also very important, where recommendations should be in writing, and the crop advisor, as being a professional, taking responsibility for these recommendations, obviously within reason. Transportation of dangerous goods is also becoming more onerous. We as an industry travel literally millions of kilometers every year with chemicals on our vehicles, from suppliers to distributors, distributors to crop advisors, and then the last leg from the crop advisor to the farmer. And that's where the biggest challenge remains, is between the crop advisor and the farmer. Because the legislation is complex, it's onerous, but we should still adhere to it. There are many legal aspects associated with transportation, and we should ensure that proper training is given and received for all people handling and transporting these type of products. Storage has also come under the spotlight over the last 12 months with an unfortunate incident happening in our industry. We should ensure that we comply with all the legal and health and safety aspects that are applicable to the storage of dangerous goods. There are many documents that clearly state the depot standards that we need to adhere to, and we should comply with that and ensure that all our workers know what the standards are and also comply with these standards. And then lastly, but not least, the insurance. Because life happens, and we need to ensure that we are properly insured in a case of such an unfortunate incident, because it can have very significant financial implications as well. On farm level, responsible use is crucial. Training, again, is an important aspect, both for our own staff, being a crop advisor with the staff at the depot level, but also staff on farm level handling these type of products. There are a number of safe handling courses that are available, and we should ensure that all staff members handling these products understand the labels, or at least the basic of the label. Monitoring of spray actions are important to ensure that the spraying and the application is done in a proper way, and also that the product is applied in an efficient way, that efficacy is obtained. I know many of our crop advisors are involved in calibration of spray equipment, which is necessary to ensure that the right amount of product reach the target in the right way. There are nowadays technology also to assist in this, like DropSight, which has been introduced to the market over the last couple of months, which can assist on farm level to determine the efficacy of spray deposition. And then lastly, there are independent consultants that can assist with spray audits and evaluating of spray equipment. All these things are very important to ensure that the right amount of products are used and that there's no waste or unnecessary use of crop protection chemicals on farm level. The last two items are sticky items, and I know, because if you talk about empty container management, many people shy away. But we need to be more responsible. We need to be cognizant of the impact of the environment. So receiving back of empty containers that are triple rinse remains a very important responsibility from the crop advisors. And we as an industry should improve the number of outlets where we can collect these empty containers and send them away for recycling. Obsolete stock management is also becoming more and more of an issue, not just on farm level, but even on depot levels. And we need to make sure that the inventories are properly managed. There are proper inventory management systems like first in, first out, that we monitor the dates when stock expire, and also on farm level, and that we take into account what products are on farm level available when we do certain recommendations, that the products on farm level is utilized and not being left alone until it expires. Training again plays an important role in the handling of the stock, and then obviously programs to manage the stock and to dispose of it in a responsible manner is crucial for all of us. I know there are still some practices in certain areas which is not responsible, and we should assist as an industry to be responsible also with the management of these items. To conclude, stewardship is everybody's responsibility. We can't just look at multinationals or suppliers or distributors, but we as crop advisors have an important role to play throughout the life cycle of a product. We must always remember what the nature is of the products we use. And it's easy to forget because we get used to our industry, but we should be cognizant of these products that are really potentially detrimental if used incorrectly or disposed in an irresponsible manner. Make sure that all aspects are in place to ensure that you can do your job in a professional, sustainable, and responsible manner, from training to infrastructure right through the chain. But then certainly one of the most important things is attitude. If we have an attitude to improve our industry, to improve the professionalism of our industry, then we're going to move forward much faster. On the flip side, if we have an attitude to try to cut corners and to shy away from responsibilities, it's going to have the opposite effect. So we need to have an attitude to really improve the industry and also the sustainability. Let's avoid another Operation Cat Drop, because that can happen if we don't take into account what the knock-on effects of certain actions can be. We as an industry, we as crop advisors have a critical role to play. So I challenge you, ask yourself, are you a responsible crop advisor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gideon, for such a nice presentation there. I think you have laid a very nice ground, for all the crop advisors out there. And I like what you have actually showed with the DDT story, that there is a connection. What you do wrong here, it may affect another. Thank you so much. We are actually going to move now to our next speaker, which is Derek Matthews, who is a very well known and very experienced person who's actually going to share with us about the producer expect from the distributors. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good morning. Just by means of a short introduction, who is Derek Matthews? I'm a fourth generation grain farmer from our farm's name is Silverton. It's about 60 kilometers west of Lichtenburg. My great granddad settled in 1879 and the family have been there since. I've been on the farm since 1983 and it's primarily a crop farm. It's a mixed farming operation with livestock and crops, but primarily a crop farm. Traditionally a maize farm, but if you all know what the realities of maize production is now, the higher value crops like sunflower and beans are starting to take up the lion's share of production simply because of economics. So I've been asked to share with you this morning what does a producer need from a crop advisor / distributor. And I think therein lies the problem, the crop advisor / distributor. I only need two things. I need sound, independent advice on any pest, whether it be weeds, whether it be insect or diseases. So I need reliable, sound, independent advice. That I need. The second thing that I need is I need cost-effective supply of solutions. So what is the current situation in South Africa at the moment? That person is the same person. That brings about a very, very heavy reliance on the integrity of that person. If that person, Gideon shared with us now, how important it is for that advisor to give the right advice and to give the right solution. Now, I'll tell you, I'm going to be sharing a little later on what my personal experience has been over the number of years that I've been farming with regard to the advice and the supply of solutions. Why is it so important that we have to address this subject? Crop protection makes out a huge part of the input cost into a grain farm. And if we start looking at conservation agriculture systems, regenerative agriculture systems, it becomes even more. I remember so well the day that my wife, after changing our farm onto going into 100% no-till system, and she saw the chemical bill and she said to me, "What on earth are you guys doing? How can you be spending this amount of money on chemicals? It's just totally ridiculous." The problem is, if you're in a no-till system, and you get advice and you apply a solution and the solution doesn't work, what do you got to do? You got to buy more chemicals. And if for some reason that doesn't work again, what do you got to do? You got to buy chemicals again. Because that's the system. And it becomes really problematic. So on our farm right now, crop protection probably makes out second to fertilizer, makes out the lion's share of our input cost. So this is why it's critically important that we take a look at this. Our experience to date. A previous crop advisor of mine or distributor, I don't know what would the correct term be? My chemical rep. Yeah. The previous one who used to serve me, he had a little app. He developed a little app, and he was quite proud to show me the app on his tablet that he did that. And his advice that gave me, in the center of his app, was a big red block, and that was based on profit margin. It was based on profit margin. So I have to ask myself the question: is the advice I'm getting the best advice for me, or the best advice for him? So do you understand where I'm getting at? When you have it being the same person, you rely incredibly heavy on the integrity of that person, on the integrity of that advice. Because if it's the same person, is he only providing a solution of products that he has in his portfolio, or is he providing you with the best solution? And yesterday, the last speaker in the first session, I forget his name. Is it Carl or Rod? I can't remember the person's name. Forgive me. But he mentioned something that we should go to a system like the medical industry is, where a doctor prescribes, and you walk out of the doctor's room with your prescription, and you go to whichever pharmacy that you see fit, and you go and acquire the solution. So understand the level of advice that you're getting from your advisor. And I'm telling you now, as a farmer, I would be prepared to pay for that. For that peace of mind that when I have a problem on my field, I can pick up the phone, and within reasonable time, I have somebody in the field, boots in the field, that can give me the proper advice and can recommend a solution. And then I can go out. And then I need a competitive industry where I know that I'm going to be able to acquire that solution at the most cost-effective manner. Now, I was listening to Gideon's presentation just now, and Gideon, in one of your slides there, you've got links in the chain. You've got supplier, you've got distributor, you've got crop advisor, then you've got farmer. Now, as farmers, we can't afford all those links anymore. And I'm going to tell you why we can't afford them anymore. In 1989, after my dad retired, I'd been farming with him since 83, and in 89, I wrote up my first budget where I did everything on my own. And it was difficult. We'd come out of extended droughts of the early 80s, and there wasn't much money going about. I hadn't had time to build up any kind of reserves or any kind of collateral. So I was literally an emergent farmer, a start-out farmer with nothing. No access to funding. You know where I'm at? No access to funding. The co-op wouldn't help me, the bank wouldn't help me, and my dad wouldn't sign collateral for me. So I had to, but there was a government, the Agricultural Credit Board, Landbou Krediet en Grondbesit. And I wrote out my first budget on an A4 paper, couple of lines, I wrote it out. And Alkachir loaned me 61,000 Rand. And with that 61,000 Rand, I went ahead and I planted 600 hectares of maize. 40 hectares was sunflower, the rest was all maize. My gross income, my yield was 1.8 tons a hectare on the maize, and my gross income was 114,000 Rand. So if you make a deduction of that, that leaves me with 53,000 Rand. 86% of next year's inputs were cash funded out of 1.8 tons a hectare. So we fast forward 2018, my son joins me after studying on the farm at Stellenbosch, joins me on the farm, and we did the same calculation. So yields have risen fantastically. We're at 4.3 tons a hectare. What do you think the profit of 4.3 tons a hectare can make? We don't make 9% of our inputs. 4.3 tons a hectare does not make 9% of our inputs. So what is my ability? I can live on a 9% margin, 10% margin. I can survive. I can carry on. It's profitable at least. But what is my ability to survive a drought or any kind of natural catastrophe? It's non-existent. You cannot. We no longer have any safety net in South Africa. So the farmer is totally reliant on his own reserves, on his own resources to survive any kind of catastrophe. And with those kind of margins, we simply cannot do it. So when I talk about the links in the chain and never mind only the number of links, let's look at the balances in the links. So I've asked farmers from Limpopo down to the Cape, from Swaziland to Middelburg, across the country. For the last 2 years, I've asked them the same question. I said, who in your area are the guys that are buying farms, are buying livestock, and driving new vehicles? The answer is the same across the board. The crop advisors. It's the same. You're going to ask them. So which are the companies that can afford to book out the MSC and take their customers on a trip? Which are the companies that can afford to fly in numbers of their customers, of their stakeholders, to exclusive lodges for a product launch? I'll leave you with those questions. So, what do we need? We need highly skilled, reliable, independent advice, and we need a cost-effective supply with good competition for the solutions. I thank you.
Thank you, Derek. I almost feel your pain because it really sounds very painful. What you are sharing with us and very truthful. It actually means that we must try and do something differently to help the farmers, from what you said, in that integrity, must be there when giving advice, not just to push the product, because as advisors, we want to make money. We must also think of the farmers' challenges, and we must be solution-based. I really, really like that. I think our panel session will be very much interesting, because that is where we will actually get into the deeper, discussion about this. Thank you, Derek. Now we are going to call our next speaker, Vutlhari Chauke, who's actually going to be representing emerging farmers. And she's also going to be sharing her pain. Thank you, Chauke. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you're thinking, yes, this one looks like a model. She doesn't look at all like a farmer. I'm sure I get that a lot. And it's because I think agriculture is changing. Back in the day, there were a lot of, we call them the older generation, let me put it like that, who are the ones going into agriculture. But some of us young people have seen the opportunities in agriculture. We want to get into the space, but man, oh man, is it a tough industry to crack it in. So my name is Vutlhari Chauke, like she's introduced. I'm the owner and CEO of VT Harvest. Because I'm still an emerging farmer, I'm the production planner, the supervisor to the irrigation, the delivery person. Sometimes I'm the person who buys the fertilizer, but most of the times I need to make sure that every seedling that we grow in our farm grows to its optimum potential, so that we can have the highest yield. And the experiences that I'm going to share today are based on my journey as an emerging farmer. I think he said I must press this button. Cool. There we go. So just to give you a brief background of who VT Harvest is. So 5 years ago, I was like, you know what, I'm done with corporate. I'm a girl from Limpopo. I saw my grandmother take a tomato from the house. She would throw it in the vegetable garden. A couple of months, we were having tomatoes. So I thought, agriculture sounds like one of those industries I'm not afraid of. We've done this at home. In my house, we've got tomatoes, we've got mangoes, we've got all sorts of fruits and vegetables that you can think of. And I thought, you know what? Agriculture is an exciting industry, and I wanted to really go into agriculture. So because I'm from Limpopo, I didn't have land in Johannesburg, and that entailed a lot of driving around for me until I could find a farmer in the Tarleton area who would lease me tunnels in his vicinity. I was quite fortunate to find a farmer who was also willing to provide me with mentorship because, I knew nothing at all about agriculture. So when we started, am I pressing the right place? There we go. So when we started producing high-value crops because we didn't have a big space. So we were growing fancy lettuce and herbs. So the lady that you see on the side there, that's our wild rocket. We were growing wild rocket, we were growing coriander, we were growing mint, but we're also growing lettuce. And because I've got product development and new business development experience. I was willing to go out to the different customers in the industry, knock on their doors and say, hey, I'm a new farmer in the industry, I'm growing fancy lettuce, I'm growing herbs, please buy my produce. And because the quality was really good, we're able to gain those kind of customers. 2 years into the journey, we entered a competition with SAB. They had a program called the SAB Urban Agri Program, where they were inviting young people to enter, and as part of the winning prize, SAB would then find a hydroponic solution for the farmers. So it was a nationwide competition. We entered, and we were part of the top 9. So before the SAB program, really, the only thing that I knew about agriculture were my herbs and my fancy lettuce. And then as part of the SAB Urban Culture Program, then they said, why don't you grow tomatoes? So I was like, okay, tomatoes sound interesting. Sure. Didn't know what I was getting myself into here, or else I would have chosen a different crop. But they said to us, you know what, we're going to pay you with a technical team. There'll be people that will be helping you with the fertilizer program, with the chemical program. So you should be okay. And I thought, why not? Okay, so if they're footing the bill, let me go for it. What can I lose? At least it's their money, not my money. And that's when the journey started. Fortunately for us, and I'm just giving you this brief background because this will form part of my presentation going forward. So fortunately for us, this funding came at the beginning of 2020, and it came just before the lockdown happened. So had I not had these tomatoes, then really that would have been the end of me, because now my fancy herbs and lettuce did not have a market towards the end of March. So we planted our tomatoes a bit late in the season, so which meant that at the beginning of winter we had some kind of stock to harvest. Just to give you an indication of our area there. So we're really still a small company. We have 10 tunnels where we're planting tomatoes hydroponically. We're using a cocoa peat growing medium. So since the beginning of 2020, we've been using the SOM growing medium. And I'm sure in your mind you're thinking, there must be lots of hojas already growing in there. Precisely. And that's why I'm putting it up there. We've been using the same growing medium since 2020. And just to make sure that we've got cash flow, tomatoes are really a summer crop. So we've incorporated still the fancy lettuce, we've incorporated the herbs to make sure that we remain afloat. And already what you can see here is that from the different, there we go. Can I use this one? Okay, cool. All right. So what you can already see here is that because we have a mixed farm production, whether it's Bagrada bug, whether it is Tuta absoluta, whether it's whitefly, whether it's red spider mite, we've got it. So when I come to someone who's a crop advisor, I'm coming to help me manage my whole ecosystem there. because I've got the tomatoes, but I've got my herbs and my lettuce, which I need in order to survive when the tomatoes are out of production. And just to give you just another brief background there, it said, next 50 meters from my tunnel, there's another farmer who is growing cucumbers in his tunnel. And another 50 meters, there's another farmer who's also growing tomatoes. And we all practice different solutions and system when it comes to controlling pests within our agri-park. We're based in the agri-park. And I didn't know that this is a potential for not a good neighborhood solution, because when they don't spray their tunnels, then we have a solution. We have a problem at our agri-park. But that will touch on as I continue with the presentation. So for us, it's a mixture of really high-value crops and crops that have a short production life cycle. My lettuce, really from planting to harvest, takes me about 4 weeks. My herbs, from planting to harvest, it takes me about 3 weeks. So already when I'm coming to you as a crop advisor, I'm saying I'm looking for a solution that I can spray on my tomatoes, on my herbs, on my lettuce, and it must be very quick so that I can make sure that I meet my withholding periods. I know it's very difficult. And the reason I'm saying this is because when we come to you as emerging farmers, we're not looking for a salesperson. As emerging farmers, most of us, we have not received funding from a bank because we are high value, not high value, but then high risk type of farmers. So it's very difficult for us to get funding. So if you don't self-fund your production, chances are you might not even start with the agricultural journey. So in our experience with crop advisors is we coming to you because you are the expert in helping me understand the kind of crop that I'm growing, and you are the expert who's going to help me to make sure that I can achieve the highest possible yield. So as I'm talking, I will share my experiences from my own operation, but also experiences from other farmers that I get to engage with on a weekly basis, other farmers that are also in my area, and it will actually show you that there's a huge information gap between the crop advisors and the farmers. Because the crop advisors, you've got the technical knowledge, but what we get to implement once you leave us with that chemical program is completely different. And that's where we're saying that we are not looking for salespeople, we're looking for someone who will help us, who will hold our hand and help us understand how do we manage resistances in the different crops that we're growing in our production areas. So when I started my journey back in 2017, so I found a beautiful place to lease. They had tunnels, and I thought, that's a good place to start. We did an Excel spreadsheet in Sandton. The Excel spreadsheet said that if I planted lettuce within 4 weeks, I was going to make maybe close to 100,000 rand. But what the Excel spreadsheet didn't tell me is that the soil had root knot nematodes. So now those sums that I was expecting didn't really materialize. And also, I think at best, my yield was sitting at 40, maybe 50%. And it was so discouraging because I thought, but you said when we were doing the spreadsheet, you as my mentor, this is my yield potential, and that did not come about. And he said, you know what, we just need to keep on planting different crops in the soil, it will get better. So long story short, we tried planting different crops in the soil, but that did not help really our story until I moved to a different location, and that's when I was able to realize that as emerging farmers, the minute we find land, we think, hooray, now I can start planting. But we need a crop advisor, someone who has worked our journey to say, okay, hang on. When you do a soil sample, it's not just for the nutrients, but you can also test the soil to check if maybe there are pests, there are pathogens in the soil that can really shorten your journey on becoming a commercial farmer. Because if you use your own money to start your production and there's nothing coming in, really a year is good enough just to take you out of business. So for us, also, I know you're not seed experts, but I'm also going to share from my experience. So the first year, SAB paid for our seeds for tomatoes. And most tomato seeds are very expensive. The good ones, that is. So because the first year, we made, it was okay, the income that we received, but it was really not enough to fund the next production cycle. So now I had to make a decision. Okay, I'm running a hydroponic. There's a lot of my fertilizer bill is already through the roof. Now, where are areas where I can start saving costs to make sure that we can just kickstart the next production? And the first place was seeds. And I learned later that that was really not a smart move. I wish I had had someone to say, you know what, if you're really going to skimp on buying good quality seeds that have some kind of a defense mechanism in them, then you really might be signing up for a very, very difficult run. The reason I'm saying this is that a lot of farmers, when we need to select seeds, we go for the bottom, the entry-level ones. But I believe if you have a crop advisor who can say to you, you know what, you're not just buying seed. A seed is a promise. So try and understand as a farmer what kind of defense has been embedded on that particular seed. So in my area, whitefly is a serious problem. And 2 months into planting that entry-level seed, I won't mention names here, entry-level seed, I had, tomato mosaic virus? That one, where you know it, where when the tomato is supposed to be that tall, it's that small. And really, those tomatoes were not marketable. The tomatoes were not marketable. It was really it was a very, very painful experience. And lesson learned is if the crop advisors, and I liked one of the presentations that was shared here, that sometimes we're looking for solutions, and sometimes we think that the cheapest solutions are the ones, but then really they're not. For us, when it comes to crop advisors, start with us from the beginning to say, have you tested your soil? What kind of seed and cultivar are you going to plant? Because we assume that you have come to our farms, you understand the type of weeds that are prevalent in my area, you already know my neighbors, you already know what kind of potential challenges I'm going to face. So when I'm about to make a seed decision, say, okay, hang on, look for this type of seeds. Don't tell me which brand to go. I'll go and do my own research, and then I will see what I need to do. For us, as emerging farmers, we get chemical programs, the ones that are printed on paper. And it says week 1, you spray 1, 2, 3. Week 2, you spray 1, 2, 3 chemicals. Week 3, week 4, week 5, until so forth and so forth. What we don't get to understand is that, yes, it's a chemical program, but then you also need to manage the environment if you can, the temperatures if you can, especially if you're growing in the greenhouse. So me and my neighbor who's planting cucumbers, I remember the one time, it rained for the whole week, and we thought, shoot, these tomatoes are cold. And he thought, shoot, on his side, these cucumbers are also getting cold. So we closed our tunnels for the whole week. We didn't open the flaps, we didn't open the doors, because we thought, you know what, if we open these tunnels, our produce is not going to grow. So let's just close the tunnels and keep our plants warm. A week later, he had powdery mildew on his cucumbers, and I had early blight, red spider mite, you name it, I had it. For us, yes, you've given us a chemical program, but we need you to come back and check whether we're applying it correctly. Give us information that is not written on paper, which you think everyone knows, we probably don't know it. So if someone has said to us, you know what, if you're growing in a tunnel, you need to manage the temperatures. Have a thermometer in your tunnel. Check what is the temperature in there. If it's 30 degrees, don't be applying these chemicals in your fields, because you're probably not killing anything. You're probably just building up resistance in your farm or in your tunnels. Then probably would make different decisions. And the reason I'm saying this is because as crop advisors to you, it's common knowledge. But for someone like me who's still starting out, it's like, you know what, my guys need to spray. They want to go home. It's 30 degrees. So let's just turn on the machine and start spraying. For us, what we're looking for is for you to give us solutions. I like the word that has been uttered a lot today. It's about solutions and not just brand loyal solutions. Because our yield, what we make today and tomorrow, decides whether we're going to be farmers in the next year or not. Because every cycle that is a loss, it becomes a dent to whatever savings that we might have had to kickstart our operations. I had an experience where so SAB gave us funding. I think they gave us close to 150,000 Rand to buy chemicals. This was at the beginning of, just before the lockdown. No, I think it was before the lockdown. And the supplier who was given the contract to give us chemicals really dumped a lot of chemicals in my farm, if I have to use the word dump. Because I had a budget of 150,000 Rand, there were all sorts of chemicals that were delivered at my farm. So because a chemical program will say you need to spray Mulan on week 2, because Mulan was not available, then another chemical was recommended for us to spray. When we opened the label, this particular chemical is not registered for tomatoes, for example. This chemical has 100 days withholding periods for pecan nuts. Because now these chemicals have come into my farm, the crop distributor said, no, sorry, I can't take this back. Because now they've been at your farm, I don't know what temperatures they've been stored in, so you'll need to see to finish what you're going to do with this. And I said, this was funding for me to kickstart my hydroponic project. Now you've left me with these chemicals that I can't use. What am I supposed to do with them? So for us, like I said, I'm going to share experiences from myself, then yeah, we can talk. For us, help us to manage chemical resistances. I know, and because crop advisors would be loyal to whatever brands that they're working with, I feel that sometimes we don't get the best advice as farmers. Because if I'm looking for a solution for Tuta Absoluta, and you only stock Steward, for example, but then there's another chemical that can help me manage Tuta, are you going to tell me about it? No. Chances are you won't tell me. If I don't go and ask my friend next door, what other chemicals are you spraying for Tuta? Because we all know that Tuta is a very high chemical resistant. That thing is, let's not even go to Tuta. If then that particular chemical is not part of your portfolio, the chances are I'm not going to find out about it. I've had experiences where, not that I'm bashing you guys, hey? I will say good things at the end. I promise I will. I will say good things in the end. We're looking for solutions. If it is a cost-effective solution, please recommend it to us, even if it's not part of the brand that you are selling or distributing. Because for us, we are trying to have the highest yield possible. And for us, we're trying to stay in the game to build enough reserves so that we can at least make our way to becoming commercial farmers. For some of us who are supplying customers who might want some kind of certification, local gap, global gap, that was such a painful experience for me, really, because there were so many requirements that we needed to adhere to. And the focal point for the auditor was the chemicals. One of the biggest challenges that I've had to experience was to take my products for MRL testing. So I'm following the chemical spraying program. I'm very confident that when I take my produce to the lab, it's going to come back clean. There are no residues, no on my tomatoes, and we're good to go. I had to take my product 3 times back to the lab, really. And that is a very painful and a very costly exercise. And then I said to my crop advisor, why is it that I'm following the chemical program and there are still pesticide residues on the tomatoes that I'm taking to the lab? I'm sticking to the withholding periods. I think the other one was you'll help me, you guys know this. Pyroclostrobin, what's that? But you know which one that one is. Yeah. That one was really difficult to just overcome. Because I remember the first sample that we took to the lab, we had sprayed like 2-3 weeks before. It went to the lab and it came back positive. And those levels were very, very high. And someone said, no, but you must understand there's something called chemical breakdowns. I don't even know what that is. Something called chemical breakdown. You need to understand what's happening with the different chemicals that you're spraying on your produce, and then it breaks down, it becomes something else. I don't know what that is. So when you drop off the chemical program, also help me understand what's happening with the chemical breakdowns and the residues and, so that I can learn. The one point, like I was giving an example for Tuta Absoluta. So I got advice from my chemical program and my crop advisor to say, for Tuta, you spray Ambligo. Someone said Ambligo is that chemical bomb that you want in your farm. So second month into our growing cycle, I see that, but this Tuta is becoming a problem. So I launched bombs every week, Tuta every 2 weeks, and that Tuta went nowhere. And why? I had listened to my crop advisor, and he recommended other products. I was spraying them, they were not working. Then I thought, someone said, Ambligo is the chemical bomb. So sometimes you give us advice and we don't listen, hey? Like I said, I'm going to say good things also. Sometimes you give us good advice, and as farmers, we don't listen to them. We're not being responsible. Sometimes we're thinking, I just need some solution to get rid of this problem, because if I don't get rid of this red spider mite, this is between me and making it into the next cycle. Registered chemicals are always an issue. I think this one you already know. I'm sure you've talked about it in the conference as well, to say, sometimes you find that there aren't enough registered products to last us through a cycle. The tomato growing cycle really is between 6 to 8 months. It took me going through the labels after burning 2 times to understand, okay, this chemical says you cannot spray for more than 4 times in a growing cycle. This one says you can only spray once in a growing cycle. This chemical says you can spray every 14 days. The chemical program that I had only had 4 spraying cycles. So which means by month 4, by month 5, I was really now going out of the threshold which have been written in the label. What do I do? So I continued spraying what the crop advisor gave me. And you know the story. We didn't win against Tuta. I remember the one time, sorry, can I mention brand labels? I don't know the active ingredients. I'm not there yet. We'll get there yet. I remember my chemicals program said for red spider mite, there's this particular product called Parzec. I'm not promoting anyone. Parzec says, and when I read the label after I got burnt, it said you can only spray once in a chemical in a growing cycle. My chemical program said every 3rd week I must spray Parzec. That's what I was doing. So, and the reason I'm saying this is, chances are you're going to leave us with the chemical program. Most farmers don't even read the programs. They don't read the labels. And I feel like sometimes maybe the crop advisors just encourage the farmers to say, also read the labels. Read the labels. If you don't understand, come back and ask us, then we will help you understand the labels. Because my farmers next door, our water pH at our farm is 8.2. They don't put buffer when they're spraying. Our pH is 8.2 at the farm. So when they're busy spraying chemicals for their tomatoes, they don't put any buffer in there. They just put the chemicals and then they spray. And you know what? Most of the crop advice that have been coming to my farm have been saying, but you and those guys, you planted tomatoes at the same time. How come you still have tomatoes and they're gone? I'm like, no, they've got someone else who's advising them. I don't know who the advisor is. So I don't know whether that crop advisor really follows up on that particular project to make sure that, you know what, are you putting a buffer in your water before you start spraying? Because you need a buffer to reduce the pH so that the plant, but you know that story. For us, what is common knowledge to you as crop advisors. For someone who's an emerging farmer, it might just be, no, it's just the luxury of this thing. I don't need it. But if the information and the importance of why you need to put this chemical, why you can't mix this chemical and that chemical, can help us avoid disasters in our farm. I remember the last time, we had a chemical burn at the farm, hey? You know what? It had been raining, and then we took copper count. It was hot, and we sprayed. You know what happened? My crops burned. Yeah. And it was like, you know what? I wish sometimes after we buy these chemicals, or after you tell me, buy this one, you can spray on your farm, also highlight to me, you know what? Don't spray this one when it is 28 degrees. Wait for when it's cool. Spray early in the morning or late in the afternoon, or if it's not suitable, just don't spray at all. What I'm trying to explain is hold our hand. As emerging farmers, we need you to hold our hand, because most of this information we do not know. Our ignorance, really, we should be reading labels, but I think if there is also additional advice coming from the crop advisors, it could really save us a lot of heartache. I think I've already touched on if there are other interventions that we can implement in our farms to make sure, because these chemicals are really not cheap, eh? 1 liter, we're spending like 3,000 Rand. You can only spray it 4 times in a growing cycle. In my experience, I was given chemicals that were going to expire within a couple of months. And now I was stuck with chemicals that I think they were going to expire in about 7 months. I was given, I think it was like 20 kilos of different chemicals. They're going to expire in a couple of months. And now I can't use these chemicals in my next cycle, because now the expiry date we're approaching the expiry date. So in my case, it was, okay, I've got these chemicals that have been provided to me. Do I use them, or do I throw them away? Do I throw them away, or do I do? And it was a very difficult decision. I used them, and you know what happened. Some were effective, some were not effective, and we burned. For us, when you recommend chemicals, please bear in mind also the cycles. Please check your expiry dates in your own distribution, your own depots, so that if you're going to give me a chemical that costs 4,000 Rand, and I only have a few months left, then it means I have to chuck it away and buy it again. It's not helping us as commercial farmers. I've always wanted to ask this. You know, when you go to chemical or sprayer training, they say to you, no, after your guys, we need to look after our employees. After your guys have sprayed, you must give them milk so that they can drink. Others are saying, no, don't give them milk. Just make sure that they're wearing protective clothing. Maybe I can find an answer here today, because at my farm, I'm still buying milk. And I'm not sure if it's helping or not. They're drinking milk after spraying, yes. Also, the last part is really, if they are post-harvesting solutions that can help us to prolong our produce once it is harvested, please tell us, even though it's not part of your own brand. I'm growing lettuce, and there is this chemical that you dip at the bottom of the tip of the lettuce so that it doesn't go brown and pink very quickly. I didn't find that out from a crop advisor, I found from someone else. But if you are aware of post-harvesting solutions that can be implemented in our farms, please give them. Apparently, there's a way in which you can make tomatoes go red very fast. There's that chemical, you know it. I don't know, what is it called? Stem or something, I don't know. It could be. Advice is awesome. I really want to say, the crop advisors, the distributors that I've been working with, they've been great. They've helped us to really have good yields. In some instances, we've had challenges in other instances, but we think that with more information that is being shared by holding of our hand, it can really go a long way in making sure that we can use the chemicals responsibly. And also, if the chemicals have been obsolete, give us advice on what we do with them. The empty containers, really, what do we do with the empty containers? That has been the biggest challenge for us as well, where we now have these empty containers. We want to be local GAP, global GAP certified, and we can't get the certificate for safe disposal. So that one also becomes a key requirement for us. And in conclusion, we need more information. We need you guys to hold our hands so that we can grow money in the soil. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chauke. Very nice presentation that you've shared with us, with a lot of challenges as I see and opportunities. And the way I see it, it's opportunities for the whole industry to do something, not only for the advisors. Because when I think about even absolute stock that you've just mentioned, that some that will be provided to you that would be expired, that becomes a problem, not only for you, but for us as an industry. I think let's move to our panel discussion, because I think that's where we're actually going to dig more about this and find solutions, because there seem to be a lot that still needs to be done. Over to you, Corné. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolwazi. Thank you to all the panel members, and I think your presentations were very presentable. We had Gideon from a distributor to a crop advisor side. We had commercial farmer Derek. We had developing farmers, and Nolwazi, although you the panel leader, you are from the manufacturing side. So we have basically the whole spectrum, yeah. I think conferences and congresses are designed to look at solutions. We have heard the buzzword here today is basically solutions. So I made a few notes here. Agro-crop advisor, we've heard about stewardship. What I've heard is value creation, value addition, expert, sound, independent advice. There's a difference between a salesperson and a crop advisor, a solution-driven. We in the grain industry is currently busy with food safety passport systems. Therein, the most important part is probably everything that's got to do with Act 36, where agrochemicals, or the way I was taught when I started at Grain SA was to use the word crop protection products and not agrochemicals, or gif as some people called it in the old days, but so I use crop protection. So I think before we have questions and maybe answers from the panel, then is there additions, Gideon, after you have heard all the other panel members that you might want to add to your presentation that would add some value to your presentation?
Thank you, Corné. Yes, after listening to the other presenters, it is very clear that there are different expectations from different segments of the market. And I think the one-size-fits-all approach can't do in our industry. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I know there's a lot of pressures in terms of input costs to commercial farmers and emerging farmers. And it's really a challenge for all of us. And unfortunately, there are perceptions about income levels in the crop protection industry, which some may be true and others are definitely not true. But the perceptions exist, and we have to take note of that. And I think that the fourth thing is just that the responsibility on us as an industry, and especially in terms of crop advisors, are huge. The old days where the guys made a quick sale, or there were a couple of products that you could use season after season after seasons, those days are long gone. You need to evaluate your client, his farm, the issues, and under that circumstances, make the best possible technical recommendation. And again, economics play a role, because sometimes there is a ultimate solution, but it's for that farmer not cost effective. So you have to take into account. So I think listening to the needs of your client is crucial for us as an industry. And I think the CPD type of programs that CropLife has introduced over the last couple of years, additional training, not just technical training, but also business training in terms of, the soft skills with your customers, are becoming more and more important for our industry. So we're definitely not there yet. We're improving, but I'll be the first one to stick up my hand and say there's still much more room for improvement that we need to do.
Gideon, before we give the others a chance, I've got something I pick up regularly from our farmers, is that there's a difference between a distributor and a crop advisor that adds value to the farmer. And I think that was what I've heard. You get still in the industry, you get a distributor, or what we call him, a agrochemical agent, that doesn't necessarily add value, but he distributes, he do the logistics. Where do you see that in the future? Is that still contributing to the value chain, or I would just like to get your opinion on that, because from a grain farmer perspective, I think there's definitely a difference between a crop advisor that adds value and the one that's only sorting out the logistics.
Corné, you're 100% correct. And I think the approach of the industry is to, and Derek also referred to it, if there's a link in the chain that does not add value, that link cannot be afforded in future. So a crop advisor should always be in a position to add value in terms of advice, but physical inspections, and also, again, understanding the customer's needs. So sales agents just purely distributing the products to the farms, that can be done in a much better and efficient way. So I think, in my opinion, and I know this is maybe a very contentious issue, but I think there are still individuals in the industry that's not adding the real value, and that the individuals that add value are being affected adversely by these non-value adding persons in the industry.
Yes. I think that's a very, very important point that he's talking about there, and I think we can maybe have more discussion about that. But Gideon, thank you so much for that. Derek, any thoughts after you've heard everyone's presentations?
Yeah, Corné, thanks. I think what's critically important, you mentioned earlier that we are busy in quite an extensive process looking at food safety and regulations and a grain passport system. Now, farmers are quite prepared to sign off on things within their control. Now let's just take this back to the chemical. I'm prepared to put my name on a piece of paper with regard to what I've done with that crop. So now I've relied on advice from somebody, and I've applied that advice, and based on that advice, I sign a declaration that I've signed off on the quality of that crop. What happens if that advice wasn't sound? What if that advice wasn't correct? It puts something. Farmers simply cannot do that. It makes it impossible for me then to take that responsibility. When I was listening to our colleague next door to to her presentation, I keep thinking of the deficit of agronomists in South Africa. You know, we have way too few agronomists in South Africa. In my view, it should be, we talk about a doctor prescribing. What is a doctor's qualification prescribing? He has huge liability when he's written that prescription. And if I, as a farmer, am expected to sign off on a passport with regard to the food safety, then I expect the guy that gave me the advice to have the same responsibility as what a doctor had when he wrote those prescriptions. Otherwise, I cannot sign off on it.
Yeah.
So I think, the days, and I have a number of years in this industry. I've seen where a guy comes out of school, you give him a bakkie and a tablet and a price list, and off he goes. In the first days, it wasn't even a tablet, it was a bakkie and a price list, and there you go. That's all you needed. Yeah. You understand? So we just simply cannot do that anymore.
Sure.
And I don't mean to deny anyone in the industry, in the chain, a place in the sun. We've just got to, each individual one has to take their own responsibility and make sure. And ultimately, the farmer takes responsibility for his bottom line, for his survival, for his sustainability, his economic sustainability. And that depends on all these other members in the input supply chain. Sure. So this doesn't only just count for the crop protection industry. In the grain business, it counts for everyone in our supply chain.
Yeah.
Thanks, Corné.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you for that contribution. I think what I hear is we are partners in the same industry. We need to see it that way. If one link in the value chain doesn't add value or doesn't pass his expertise to the next person, there's a problem in that link. So we need to acknowledge that partnership and your responsibility in that link, and you need to own that.
Yeah, they're going to take full responsibility of that.
Yes.
Of that part.
So we've heard from a commercial side. Vutlhari, thank you so much for your story and your presentation. After you've heard everyone else talking, you have spoken last, but is there something you would like to add to what you have presented?
I'm just grateful that there is work that is being done from a conference like this to try and really provide additional support to farmers. I think conferences like this, that's where I guess you get to brainstorm as an industry and see how better you can provide solutions for us as farmers. So I'm quite positive. Really, there are good crop advisors that have come our way that have assisted us. But like you're saying, they are just breakages in terms of linkages, and that can really be corrected with the right focus. So I'm quite positive that you can do something positive to help us.
Cool. Thank you. Nolwazi, I'm going to try your hand. After you've heard the panelists, their presentations, have you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Corné. I think coming from, representing one of the manufacturers, I worry, from what I'm hearing, because from what I'm hearing is that our products are actually not used the way they should be, and the recommendations that are out there are not actually, to do, the solution for the farmers. It's about pushing numbers. Yes, we are in the business of agriculture where we need to make money. But, integrity, the way Derek actually mentioned that we need to have integrity in this business. And going back to Kobas's presentation yesterday, where he actually mentioned that there are secondary standards, when the products are being sprayed incorrectly, like Chauke has mentioned, the issue of maximum residue levels. And when I think about that, I also go further to say, these secondary standards are actually going to affect our molecules, because some of these products, when they land in Europe, for example, they are like red flags that they are actually exceeding. They are not at the levels where they should be. And us as companies, we get targeted, on such things. And when we look at, we are actually sitting on thin line. Looking at the EU Green Deal, looking at the farm to fork, all those things, the reduction of chemicals, this can be one of the reasons, we are actually asked to do so, because we are seen as we are creating products, and these products are not used responsibly, and it actually lies to us as manufacturers. So I look at all those links, Corné, and I am sitting here and being worried, but at the same time seeing that there's an opportunity, for us to go out there as companies to do more work, stewardship training. As Chauke was saying, it was scary when she actually mentioned the issue of drinking milk after using our chemicals. I don't think there is any recommendation on our labels where that says so, nor in the Act. So when I hear about those things, it's scary. I'm thinking we need to do something, because we are actually looking at food security, sustainability, all those things. If we don't do it now, we will end up with nothing, and we will have bigger problems to solve. So that's, I can stop there. I have more, but I'll stop there.
Yeah. Thanks, Nolwazi. I think it's a very big responsibility we have as an industry, and I know some of us might smile about stuff like we heard now, examples, but it's a real responsibility, and I think we shouldn't take something like stewardship lightly. It's something we need to take really serious. The consumer trusts us in the value chain, and everyone in the value chain should take up that responsibility to be able to produce safe food, to be food secure in South Africa. So yes, I think if we've heard everyone adding something from the panel, are we ready for questions from the floor and from our online visitors? There's a question at the back.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Pieter Brewer. I'm an agronomist with Langfontein Seeds from Wakkerstroom. We're part of the BP Greiling companies. This is my son Etienne. He's an honor student in agronomy at the UFS. He's one of only 8 students doing agronomy, and that is part of the problem that you just mentioned. I want to say to Mr. Matthews, I like your story about the doctor. Spot on. In agriculture, everybody wants the prescription, but nobody wants to pay the doctor. So this is our problem. When it comes to qualified advisor, experienced advisor, everybody wants the advice, but nobody wants to pay us. This is why we sit with schoolites with a tablet and a Alex Bakkie, trying to take over and trying to replace us experienced agronomists, the qualified people, because nobody can afford us. And then we sit with the situation. I am confident to say, if I go and I do a proper planning for your crop, and you do, let's say, 1,000 hectares of maize, which is a relatively small crop farmer, that I can easily save you 200 rands a hectare on your crop protection bill, I think. So that's 200,000 rands. And I would easily add value in the total management of your farm of maybe half a ton of maize, I think, with my experience. Apart from the value that I can add to your crop, that's 200,000. It's fine if you pay it in the first year. Let's say it's 200,000 you pay me to manage your farm, your crops for you. And the second year is fine, and the third year is also fine. But what happens in the fourth year? If everything goes well for 3 years, and you follow my advice, or the qualified advisor's advice, and it works, what about year fourth? when you have to write the check or do the FT. Farmers are only willing to pay for qualified advisors when there's a problem, but not in the years when they have good yields. And this is where our problem is. Then I have to go look for the next client to start managing his disaster. Up until he gets to a stage when he's got a proper managed crop. Then I have to go to the next guy. Forgive me if I sound arrogant. I'm not saying this because I'm arrogant or trying to be clever. I wrote a thesis in 2020 about this very same subject. And my research has shown that on the Eastern Highveld, the vast majority of commercial crop farmers were not prepared to pay for qualified advice. They want the mannetjie with the kannetjie for free. So the guy who does the plant nutrition management, he must be from the supply company, and he must not charge me, because that's what he does. I'm also busy currently with a PhD research on exactly the same subject. And I hope that I can create an awareness in the whole crop farming community of South Africa in a year or two's time to let them know that we are on the way to a disaster. What's happened in our country, it used to be a public extension service. It's now in a transition phase to a private service. And this is where farmers are in a vulnerable stage and get exploited by so-called expert disseminating pseudoscience. So we need to address this thing, and we need to create awareness amongst farmers and the advisors, and to make sure that the guy who comes onto your farm, who arrives at your farm, is properly qualified, properly experienced. And he can manage the whole. So I'm very glad to hear about the passport system. That's the only system that can work. Are you properly qualified? Are you properly accredited to say what you say? Thank you very much.
Peter, thank you so much for that contribution. I think what you said, the value addition is actually the right terminology. When I talk to my members, which is mainly the grain farmers and the oilseed farmers of South Africa, they are willing to pay for someone that adds value for him on the farm. And as Derek said, we want to give everyone their piece of the sun. And I think the talking point is those that doesn't add value, what are we going to do about that? And I think what we're touching on is you get the crop advisor that's adding value. That's a green flag, I would say. That's good. But that guy that is just passing the buck, he's not adding value. So I think that's where the importance of an independent agronomist can add value to the system. I'm just thinking of the Australian model. That's exactly what Derek has described, using an independent person to come to your farm. He sees what's going on, what's needed. He puts out the script, and the farmer goes directly to the manufacturing company. I'm not saying it will always be the case. There will always be the need for a crop advisor, even in this case. But whether it needs to be linked to a certain company, I think that's the question. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Marius?
Thanks, Corné. I really enjoyed the discussion, Derek, and I think Peter, really put that forward, is that we have a huge problem. We don't have enough agronomists, trained agronomists in the industry, and getting over that is a huge challenge. My question, though, is within CropLife we have the CPD and the accreditation scheme. To what extent are the farmers aware of that? And are we, as an industry, failing in really punting that as the way that we want to manage this?
I think if I can take that, we're becoming more aware. I know that it's not something that just started last year. It's something that's been, the CropLife qualification has been around for quite a while. If you had to ask me today, when an advisor, when a rep arrives when a bakkie maniki medikaniki arrives on the farm, do I ask him, are you CropLife qualified? No. It's never been like that. For me personally, I'm not in that environment. I've got, we've built a relationship. I've had in the 38 years of farming, I've had 3 people. I'm on the third person. So it's a trust relationship that's built up. I just explained to you how I went about it. When I changed to no-till, I went and found a man who has had thousands of hectares of no-till. Has serviced thousands of hectares of no-till. So it was very difficult for me to change from our traditional guy. But he didn't have the experience in those systems. So that's how it worked on my farm. But I think there's a hell of a lot to be done with regard to setting it straight, to getting farmers to understand that. When I heard the maniki with the kaniki now, I immediately say, why do farmers go for the maniki with the kaniki? Because we don't make money. If there was enough in it, then I would want the best solution. I want the most cost-effective solution. Thanks.
Thank you, Marius, for that question. We've got a question there at the back.
Yes.
All right. No, thank you so much for this conference. At a personal level, there's a lot that I have learned, and I'll definitely be taking it back to some of the emerging farmers that I am working with. So I'm part of an organization where initially our goal was to work with the farmers to convert organic waste into biogas, because most emerging farmers do not get infrastructure services from the local municipalities. We all know the problem that we have with the local municipalities, and it became so expensive for them to actually manage their organic waste. So what we quickly notice is not only the organic waste now, is the other type of waste that Chauke was also referring to, the chemicals. We were so shocked to see the volumes and volumes of chemicals that are sitting with emerging farmers. And I was a bit curious to try and understand, where do these chemicals come from? And the manner in which they are stored, I thought is very dangerous. Personally, I'm a sensitive person myself. If something is kept not in the right way and I smell it, I start feeling funny. So then when we were asking the emerging farmers, did you buy this yourself? How did you acquire these chemicals? We noticed that the different government departments, they have some procurement spend that is going towards emerging farmers, assisting them with buying of these chemicals. And I was also curious about who's selling them these chemicals, because I have a background in entomologist, even though I ended up doing other things. But then we quickly noticed that these chemicals are obsolete. If you look at the label, most of these chemicals have expired. They are not stored in the safe way, and they don't know how to read the labels, exactly the things that she said. And I thought maybe this is a very disservice to the emerging farmers. And if you look at most emerging farmers, probably most of them, I can say they lose almost like 50% of their yield. And I was just asking myself, it looks like from our experience with just the small group of farmers we're working with, there's just spraying. They are spraying chemicals that are obsolete, and I've seen sometimes, they will be spraying insecticides on weeds to try and manage weeds. But I'm thinking there's a whole lot of problems in terms of educating the emerging farmers, giving them technical advice. So it all goes back to what I think Gerard was saying yesterday, the whole thing about stewardship. That is not something that you should be told, but it should be your own internal values as a person, that when you're giving another person that particular product, honestly, really, you know you're not giving that person the right product. You know that that product is not going to help that person become a better farmer. So that is one thing I just wanted to bring to the attention of the industry. And it's one thing that we will be communicating to the procurement departments in various government departments to say, when you procure, have you consulted the experts? Do you know the industry bodies in this area? Because chances are that you're not procuring the right product. And we're doing that not because we're being funny, but we're doing that because we know something is wrong. And if we can just, share our voice to say there's a better way of procuring these chemicals from people who are from companies that are registered, and we need to start doing things the right way. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that input. I think what I hear is knowledge transfer is just as important as the correct recommendation. So thank you so much for that comment. I'm going to take one or two comments that I have online, then I will get back to the floor here. This is more a comment than a question, but maybe Gideon, you can maybe assist here. It's from Lamas. Pest scouting is essential. Therefore, the advisor should let the farmer understand that too, not just following the program that could develop resistance quickly.
Corné, yes, that's very true. I think scouting is one area where we can improve dramatically. Some of our export fruit farmers have very good systems in place where they do scouting, because it's just impractical for one person to scout a whole entire farm. So you need a scouting system, you need properly trained scouts, and you also need the tools to measure whether you're above certain thresholds, whether to apply certain products or not.
Like an early warning system?
Or maybe not to apply certain products, because that's just as important. And where there are true integrated pest management systems, we've seen that export fruit farmers on a commercial basis is in a position to produce zero residue fruit for export. So it can be done, but it's a total different mindset from the conventional, just a normal spray program with normal intervals.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gideon. We've got a question there from the floor. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. It's Rob Dawson from New Farm. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I think in the world, you will always find opportunists, and there will always be somebody who's trying to sell you perhaps the right thing, perhaps the wrong thing at the cheapest price. So what I would say is, from a farmer perspective, try and educate yourself and read as much as you possibly can about your crops, your pests, your products that you need to use, and obviously going along with that, choosing the right crop advisor and somebody that is trustworthy, I think is key. Secondly, I wanted to say that I would be very interested to see the decline in the profitability of a farm in South Africa versus the depreciation in the rand. Because the challenge, and I'm speaking from a agrochemical producer side, the challenges for us, and believe me, we have loads of supply challenges currently this year, but all the agrochemicals are priced in US dollars. So, and I've seen this across, I've just done a long trip throughout Africa, and believe me, this is not unique to South Africa. There are places like Sudan, like Kenya, like Egypt. Egypt has just had a 25% depreciation in their currency. So you can imagine what that does when all your products are priced in either euros or US dollars. So I'm not abstaining from any responsibility to say that there's got to be some sort of compromise where there's got to be reasonably priced chemicals. But the challenges are also within a continent where the currencies are under pressure compared to international currencies. Thank you.
Rob, yeah, thank you for your comment. I don't know if somebody wants to add to that.
Thanks, Corné, if I may, Rob. I think the exchange rate and the depreciation of that situation is very real. As a farmer, on my output side, I have to manage it, and I have to do my hedging. I've got to put things in place. It's extremely difficult for me on my input side to do that. But whereas your manufacturer, which are predominantly multinational companies, and then your supplier, first link after the manufacturer, are in a far better position to hedge out exchange rate risks than what a farmer would be to. I mean, I think it's just one step too far to expect a farmer to hedge that exchange rate risk as well. I know it's not an example in the crop protection industry, but in one of our other input suppliers where a company is South African-based multinational is not prepared to do hedging, forward buying, not prepared to do it. They're very comfortable, they're in a comfort zone, and they can pass on that risk to the farmer. We've been, and farmers absorb input cost inflation. Every link in the input supply chain has the opportunity, has the privilege. When they experience an input inflation, they pass it down to the bottom line. They maintain their margin, and it goes down. The farmer doesn't have that. The farmer doesn't have that opportunity. We're the last, and that sponge is now full. We can't anymore. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that, Derek. I think also from my side, our exposure and our dependence on imports is maybe something we should also discuss. Is there something we can do in the crop protection space to maybe look at producing more of it ourselves? Currently, basically 100% of our product is being imported, and that exposes us extremely. Before I take another question from the floor, I've got a question here online. Graham Harding is saying or asking, can a crop advisor be company bound? Most companies carry a wide range of products, whether generic or patented, having the whole spectrum of options, but the incentive and the margin drive the product of choice. And I think that have been said from our
that's
farmers.
Our experience.
Yeah,
it's not something. It's not an allegation we're making. That's our experience.
Yes. So what we're hearing is, how do we get the right solution, not the right price or the right profit margin for the advisor himself.
Corné, maybe if I may comment on that, and it's unfortunate, and I don't dispute what Derek says at all. However, there are very fierce competition in the market, and in my experience, a person that outprices his products or programs are very quickly caught out. So I think competition, market forces will sort out those type of problems, maybe not immediately. But that's got a very short shelf life, and so I think it's and to the question of Graham, the crop advisors are company bound, because that's where you do the training, the assistance, the support, your supply chain logistics. So our role as an industry should be to get the product as cost effective on the farm as possible. Yes. So there are a number of initiatives to eliminate costs in the supply chain. Rob referred to it. Unfortunately, the last couple of years have been very, very challenging, not just in South Africa, across the world. With container cost, in some instances are being more than the products inside the container. So it's actually getting ridiculous, and we're sitting, there's the mic back, and we're sitting in a position where we all face this challenge because we're such a small player in the international market.
Yes. Thanks for that.
Yeah, Corné, I think Gideon touches on a lot of important things. The problem is that you can't see this in isolation. I mean, we can't expect industry to sort of, suppliers to sort it out. We can't expect, it's got to be a solution that farmers and industry sit around the table together and find. And it's I don't know. I just don't know how we can cross this bridge of when your advisor, when the guy doing the script, the guy giving the advice, when he's company bound, I mean, that company will also only have agreements or have an offering. He won't have the whole thing. How do we cross that bridge to get to where the advice is actually the best advice to the thing? If it's not in his, is the integrity of such a level that if the solution isn't within his portfolio, that he's going to refer you to somebody else? I don't think so.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Derek. There's another question from the floor there at the back. Thank you.
Yes, Emmanuel Sminga from BSF. And my question is to Vutlhari. I think she raised an issue about MRLs, where she says it's a question to you, like you followed all the programs, but you still had residue issues. So perhaps this also touches on what Nolwazi also brought up about secondary standards. So my question to you, and then maybe Nolwazi can comment, is was this based on the primary standards, the MRLs, or secondary standards when you had the residue picked up on your crop, for instance? And if that's actually the issue, maybe the question would also be most of the residue trials that have been done, which are determining the withholding period for different crops, are done on the MRLs as the primary standards. How do we harmonize this issue as an industry? Because secondary standards are coming up, and these are driven by the market. That's the customers or the supermarkets, especially for the export market. If you can comment on that, and then Nolwazi. Thanks.
Okay. I think from what I heard from Chauke, is that she says that she would have done the right thing. And I also want us to think not only for export, because can you imagine what we are eating ourselves in South Africa? Because when you talk about secondary standards, it's all the export. Now, if she has followed the right thing and we are still having these residues that are high, I mean, the question would be, one, did we apply it at the right time? Is it even registered for this particular crop? And what do we need to change in the following season? For example, us as companies, when we receive such information, we do an investigation where we can actually share, breakdown curves, that can assist the farmer, because we get worried when you actually get MRL exceedances, because this affects us at the end, because that molecule gets flagged, for the wrong reasons, and because it has been applied incorrectly, probably in some cases. And we have actually having, questions even from the Department of Agriculture, where they would actually ask us, we've actually had this report on this farmer that this product has actually exceeded. What can we do? We do advise the farmers, on what has happened, because we actually get to understand what you have done, and then we actually give training, what you can do to reduce that. But that can differ on molecule to molecule, because when you are applying a program, it's a mixture of molecules. We do not know whether there could be synergies or issues within that mixture. It's something that it needs to be discussed in industry.
Could I ask a question just here? As a manufacturer, are you not concerned at the number of links in the chain? Your responsibility and your product that you're producing. You've got so many links now, and if those links are not responsible and if there's not integrity in those links, aren't you at risk?
We are very much at risk, and as it has been mentioned yesterday during the REC presentations where resistance have been mentioned, we are actually asking ourselves, because I mean it takes a lot of years for us to even create that molecule, to make that solution available for the farmer. When it is not being used properly, it actually puts us at risk. So what we are trying as a company now, before, training was actually being done with the crop advisors, but now as a company we are taking even further responsibility, where we're actually even going to the farms to actually make them understand what these molecules are there to solve, and the kind of risks if they use them the opposite way that they should. So we are taking that further step as a company. Actually, it's very worrying for us when we hear what you've actually been presenting.
So what I'm hearing is that we're a lot closer to a solution than what we think. If I as a farmer can go straight to the manufacturer, then you can carry out your responsibility and I can carry out my responsibility.
Well, not completely, but as a manufacturer, we actually work, with the farmer by giving them technical advice when there is a need, for them. But we are not also keeping out the crop advisors, because we must understand that sometimes the crop advisors would have done the right thing, but the farmer would decide to do the wrong thing. So, but as manufacturers, if we get any question, we do take that upon ourselves to actually help the farmer.
I'm not cutting out the crop advisor or the agronomist at all. So I identify a problem on the farm that I don't know. I get an agronomist in, and I get a certain advice. My advice is go to product X. I go to the manufacturer of product X, and then manufacturer of product X can be responsible, can check that I'm doing what I have to do as well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not about denying anybody in the supply chain their place in the sun. It's about, who picks up the can when things go wrong.
I think things wouldn't go wrong if we have done it right at the beginning. That's what I'm actually...
Yes, good discussion.
Yeah, maybe
Thanks,
Corné, if I can come in here, I think especially in the export fruit industry, again as an example, the crop advisors and the distributors are taking full responsibility for the recommendations, for the programs. If there's any problem with MRLs or fruits that are rejected on the other side, and there was a problem with the program, then there is accountability. And the same applies for grain. So I think maybe, and that was a question that Marius also posed, maybe we should do more work in presenting from a CropLife perspective who are accredited CropLife members, one, and that you make sure that the person that's on your farm is accredited, that he or she is properly trained and can do the job that you expect, taking the responsibility that you expect. Because I must come up for the suppliers. All the reputable suppliers do proper training of their products at distributor level to crop advisors. And again, it goes into selection, and Dani said at the back, the problem is with farmers being under pressure, the cheaper solution can create a cat drop at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's the issue. So there's always a knock-on effect. So the cheapest is not necessarily the best.
No.
Yeah.
Agree?
Yeah. I think this is a very fruitful discussion. We've got a comment here from Gary Latham. I think that's on Derek's point. He says manufacturers also sell to buying groups and large farmers directly, often bypassing the agronomist or even their own agents. But the question is if that's responsible and there's also the stewardship involved there, is there something wrong with that? If there's that stewardship already in that linkage, are we really bypassing a stage where we are now taking shortcuts? Well, maybe it's an unfair question now, but if there's Do we have any other questions? Henk?
Comment regarding the MRLs. So if you want to discuss this topic first and then come back to the MRLs, that's fine. I just want to ask Mr. Matthews whether he buys his Massey Ferguson trackers from Massey Ferguson headquarters or from Massey Ferguson in Lichtenburg. And what value do they add? But you can go back to the first discussion.
Very good question.
And then I'll come back with a comment on the MRLs.
Well, we can take 2 questions at a time from you, Henk.
So you can multitask. Okay, that's good. The fact that there are MRLs, of course, is not necessarily a problem. The problem only exists if the MRLs exceed the levels listed for the particular product. And that should never happen if the label is followed carefully, because there are huge buffers built into the establishment of MRLs based on ADI for a very specific active ingredient, the use pattern, etc., etc. So I just thought maybe there was a misperception that we have to produce crops with 0 residue. That's virtually impossible to do.
Thank you. Yeah, Henk, I agree with you. In the product development itself, that should already be set. So I agree with you fully.
For registration, the issue of ADIs, and that goes back to your PHI.
Yeah.
If you exceed your PHI, if you exceed your dosage rate, then there can be a problem. But there should never be a problem if the label is adhered to strictly, because it costs a lot of money to establish a residue profile, to establish a MRL, etc., etc.
Yeah. So anything from the panelists on the MRLs before we tackle the Massey Ferguson example?
Yes. I just want to find out from the house. So, sometimes you'd read a label and it'd say it is compatible with, you can mix with this particular group, you can mix with other. Those labels there, when they say a product is compatible to be mixed with another product, or this one, it cannot be mixed, can we take that as a final gospel? Because sometimes someone will say, you know what, in your particular week, mix this one, add it to that spraying program, then it will solve your problems. When I start mixing chemicals, does that affect the efficiency or the effectiveness of those chemicals to be effective in managing the pests and diseases in my crops? So yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. It may very well. And especially if it's specified in a label that a product is not compatible with another product, you should definitely follow that. So the label still remains the legal binding document. Anything that's done outside the label causes risk for you as a farmer and also for the crop advisor. So always stick to the label.
Yes.
Definitely.
What I've learned from Dr. Gerard and Rod is the label is the law.
Yes.
So if it's on the label, follow the label first.
Thanks.
We've got Chris Thompson here for a question.
Thank you, Corné. Both Vutlhari and Derek have given the crop advisors a bit of a knock today, I think. So I feel I've got to come up for them a little. Derek, you spoke about the margins that you are under pressure with. A lot of our crop advisors operate on less than that. If you look at, and I must answer Peter back there in terms of his referral to agronomists, there are crop advisors and there are crop advisors, and there are agronomists and agronomists. And with respect to you, Peter, if you choose your crop advisor properly, you should not need an agronomist. Everything we've spoken about today, MRLs, monitoring, empty container removal, not selling obsolete chemicals, MRLs, all that sort of stuff, your crop advisor should be providing that service for you. And for him to operate on a 9 or 10% margin, as you farmers have to, with his deliveries, with his weather stations, with his monitoring, with his PPM, precision farming programs that he does, I think there's a definite place for a proper crop advisor and a proper agronomist.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Chris, for that. I think, Derek, now it gets to both Henk and Chris's opinion on whether the manufacturer or the the company and the agent and the dealership example comes in.
Yeah, okay. So just in immediate reply to Chris, my statements are out of experience. This is how we've experienced. This is what we've lived in the past. You know, it's not something that it's not accusations that we're just making. These are realities that we've lived with. So it's highlighting pockets of disintegrity, if that's a word, you know, of lack of integrity within a situation. So I agree 100%. If there was total, and that's what I said in my presentation, the current situation in South Africa necessitates extreme reliance on the integrity of that person. So can we guarantee that? On the economic side, we look at, you know, all the links in the chain, and can we afford it? You know, is there not room for me to go and buy from a manufacturer? That's the thing. With regard to the Massey Ferguson answer, that situation has changed in the last 3 to 4 years. We now find that the suppliers, the manufacturers, are actually taking over the distribution channels in South Africa. So yes, right now, the equipment I'm buying direct from the manufacturer out of the US.
We've got Chris. We've got 1 or 2 questions that we can take, and then last comment from the panelists. Then we can wrap up.
Just quickly, thank you, Corné. Derek, I think they are specialists in their fields, and where Nolwazi at Corteva, as example, they specialize in registering and manufacturing new chemistry. If they want to have our 6,500 farmer accounts, a lot of them, for good reason, who can't pay and want to run with that admin, they are welcome to. But we are specialists in what we do as distributors, just as the manufacturers are. We would love to help you and cut out a link in the chain, but if you have the proper people at each level, I think there's no space to take someone out, unfortunately.
Okay.
Chris, I think before I give him Derek a chance, I think that's the key. If every link in the chain adds value, there's no need to cut out someone. So I think that's just the important thing we want to let the conference hear is if there's still links in the chain that just pass through product or organize the distribution or the transport, I think there's no fat in the value chain for that anymore. But for someone that does the same as agronomist, I think, and other value addition is definitely there will always be space for that person in the agricultural value chain. So, Rod, we've got a question there from the floor.
Just a comment, Corné, and I'm not going to deny people from their caffeine and nicotine, so I'll be quick. When the organising committee pulled this session together, we didn't quite know what the outcome was be, but I'm extremely pleased with the outcome. This was all unscripted. We gave no guidance to the presenters today, but I think it's brought out exactly what the organisers hoped. People need to talk. We have our annual debates with Grain SA, and we hear stories back all the time, which we share with our members. But this is the first time we've had all people in the value chain together in a room. So I'm extremely pleased what everybody has done. Thank you. But for me, it highlights, and I think some of you all touched on it along the way, it's joint responsibility. So sorry for Derek, but you cannot expect the crop advisor to take full responsibility. You have to take responsibility of what gets put on your farm as well. The distributors cannot throw up their hands and say, oh, well, it's the supplier's problem. They manufactured and put on the label. Sorry, you've recommended the product to the farmer. And if you've made a mistake, take it on the chin. And the suppliers also, you need to know where the hell your product's going. Don't just put it into the distribution chain and forget about it. So we're back to stewardship. It's back to responsibility. It's back to doing the right thing that Gerard punted. It's down to your ethics. And it's joint responsibility is the summary I want to put down. It's from manufacturer who registered it, to the distribution, to the crop advisor, to the farmer. So thanks, Corné. It's been an awesome session from my point of view. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Rod, thank you so much for that comment. I think what I hear is partnership, responsibility of each chain member, and stewardship right through the value chain. That's definitely a very good summary that you made right there. I'm going to give a last chance for a panel member if they've got something burning to say. Gideon.
Thank you, Corné. Yes, I want to add on what Rod said is, we as an agriculture sector must see each other as partners. We're not opposition. It's not that one sector wants to exploit another sector, but we have to keep each other accountable. So I'm all for that. But we need to work together to find solutions. We're just too small to work in isolated islands to be successful. So, and where there are issues, let's put it on the table. Let's address it. Is the industry squeaky clean? No. Have we progressed? Definitely. So there's room for improvement. We want to improve. We need to hear the issues. I think there's a much bigger issue, structural issue for emerging farmers. The agricultural industry is just part of the solution. I think mentoring, other services are in dire straits and needed to get on the farms. But it's good that we place these things on the table, that we hear each other. Because I think there are prejudice in some instances, and a forum like this can clear it. And as soon as we enter into dialogue, we can discuss it and come to a solution. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Gideon. Derek?
Thank you, Corné. I think it's quite obvious we can't work in silos. We depend on each other to ensure good quality, safe food for the customers. We depend on each other for sustainability for every link in the chain.
Yeah.
We depend on each other. Without a farmer, the manufacturer doesn't have a client for his product. And the crop advisor, the supplier, distributor, crop advisor doesn't have a client. They don't have a reason to exist. 100%. We depend on each other.
For sure.
And I get a lot of flack from farmers saying, don't regard your input suppliers as your friends or as your partners. They want to see them as adversary. That's not where I'm at. We're not adversary. We depend on each other. We've got, I need the best products. And this is where I think of yesterday's discussion on Act 36 and all the backlogs and the incredible challenge that we have with that. There are so many good solutions that are out there that we don't have access to.
Yeah.
We've got to fix those kind of things. And I can't do it as a farmer on my own. And we can't expect the industry to do it on their own. So we just got to rely on each other. It's about a collective
partnership.
Effort.
Yeah. Ms. Vutlhari.
I think on my side, what I really wanted to echo today was the requirement for proper training from an emerging farmer's perspective, where you're able to assist with training as crop advisors, as manufacturers. That part will really, really welcome. But also, just to add that, like they've said, it's all an ecosystem. If you take one part out, then the whole ecosystem fails. For us, we might be the future commercial farmers.
For sure.
But for you to be, we are. And for us to walk a journey with a crop advisor, help me out when I'm still small. Respect me as an emerging farmer. Give me the right information when I'm still emerging, then we get to walk the journey with you. He said he's had 3 at least. We're not going to make it 10 or 12. Yes, but we're quite excited. I think we've received a lot of assistance, especially for emerging people like myself who jump from one industry and go into another one. We've found reputable crop advisors who have managed to hold our hand and help us in the journey, and we're quite grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. I think everyone has that message quite clear. Nolwazi, a last word from you.
Thank you, Corné. I think I want to thank CropLife for organizing this, because I think it's something that we needed to do, because we've been talking about these kind of things in the corners, and now this has given us a forum to bring them out, because they've been there burning and they are waiting to burst. So, and having spoken about these things, we actually need to have a plan. How do we solve them? Because there's no point of actually talking about them but doing nothing after. The important thing is, what do we do after this conference? Is it a conference to just bring issues? Are we going to do something about those issues? And I can tell you now, myself as a manufacturer and a stewardship lead, I am actually going to be probing Rod and Gerald to say, what do we do? Here we are as manufacturers. How can we work together? How can we partner? Because these are our molecules that we need to look after. These are the solutions that we think we are bringing to the farmers. If they are not being used correctly, we are going to be left with none.
Yeah.
So that's my take, Corné, for today, is that we should do something. We should drive it. Yeah.
Great. Nolwazi, thank you so much for that. As I know the leadership of CropLife, not only including Rodney, but I see them as implementers and changers, and I think this discussion won't stay here. From a Grain SA point of view, it definitely won't stay here, so we're going to try to meet each other and change where changes need to happen. I want to thank every one of you for being hunters today. You shot quite straight today, but thank you for that. That's needed. We need this. We need to talk straight to each other, and thank you for CropLife organizing this good panel discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.